The sun beat down like a hot frying pan on the empty highway. Marco wiped sweat from his eyes and looked back at the old gas station where his little sister Sophie lay in the shade. His heart was beating so fast it hurt. For the last 20 minutes, he had been running up and down the road, waving his arms, trying to make someone stop. No one did. They just drove faster, like they were scared of a dirty 10-year-old boy. "Please, my sister needs help," Marco shouted as another car zoomed past. His throat felt raw from yelling, and the bottoms of his feet burned on the hot asphalt. He didn't have shoes anymore. They'd been stolen last week while he was sleeping. Marco ran back to check on Sophie. She was only 7, too little to be this sick. Her lips had a scary blue color now, and her chest moved up and down too fast, making weird whistling sounds when she tried to breathe. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Floppy, the only toy she'd managed to keep since they started living on the streets 3 months ago. "Hang on, Sophie," Marco whispered, pushing her sweaty hair from her forehead. "Someone will stop. I promise." But no one had stopped. Not the lady in the nice car who locked her doors when she saw him. Not the truck driver who honked his horn and swerved. Not even the police car that had driven by 10 minutes ago. Marco felt tears burn his eyes. Ever since Mom went to the hospital for her sickness, that's what she called it when she took the bad medicine that made her sleep for days, he had promised to take care of Sophie. Now she was turning blue, and he couldn't help. They'd been staying in the back room of the gas station for 4 days. It wasn't so bad. There was a sink with water that still worked, and they'd found half a loaf of bread in the dumpster behind the mini-mart down the road. But this morning, Sophie couldn't catch her breath. Her asthma was back, worse than ever, and her inhaler had been empty for weeks. Marco ran back to the road. The hot air smelled like tar and exhaust. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since yesterday, but hunger didn't matter now. Only Sophie mattered. In the distance, he heard a rumble. At first, he thought it was thunder. But the sky was clear blue without a single cloud. The sound grew louder, like angry bees getting closer. Then he saw them. Motorcycles, at least 7 of them, coming around the bend in the highway. Normally, Marco would hide when he saw bikers. Mom had always said to stay away from men with tattoos and leather vests. But today was different. Today, Sophie couldn't breathe. Marco ran to the middle of the road and waved his arms wildly. "Stop! Please stop!" he screamed, his voice cracking. The motorcycles got closer, the noise so loud it hurt his ears. He could see the riders now, big men with beards and sunglasses, wearing black leather vests covered in patches. One patch showed a skull with wings. Another said, "Hell's Angels." The lead rider saw Marco and raised his hand, signaling the others. The bikes slowed down, their engines growling like hungry lions. Marco didn't move from the middle of the road. If they hit him, at least someone might call an ambulance, and that ambulance could help Sophie. The bike stopped in a cloud of dust surrounding Marco. The biggest man, who seemed as tall as a tree to Marco, took off his sunglasses. His face was tanned and lined, with a thick beard streaked with gray. A patch on his vest said, "Axel." "What the hell are you doing, kid?" Axel's voice was deep and rough, like gravel in a blender. "You trying to get yourself killed?" Marco pointed toward the gas station, his hand shaking. "My sister," he said, his voice small against the rumble of idling engines. "She can't breathe. She's turning blue. Please help. Nobody will stop." Axel stared at Marco for what felt like forever. Marco saw the other bikers exchange looks. One of them, older than the rest with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, moved his bike forward. "Where is she?" asked the older man. A patch on his vest said, "Wolf." "Over there," Marco pointed again. "In the shade. She has asthma. Her medicine is all gone." Wolf looked at Axel, who nodded once. "Show us," Axel said. Marco didn't wait. He turned and ran towards the gas station, his heart pounding with hope and fear. The sound of boots on gravel told him the bikers were following. Maybe they were bad men like Mom had warned about, but right now they were the only ones who had stopped to help. Inside the gas station's back room, Sophie lay on a flattened cardboard box, her lips now a scary dark blue. Her eyes were half closed, and Mr. Floppy was clutched against her chest. The room smelled like old oil and dust. The only light came from a broken window, making stripes of sunshine across Sophie's face. "Jesus Christ," whispered Axel as he ducked through the doorway. His huge frame seemed to fill the small space. Behind him, Wolf pushed through, followed by two other bikers. "Move," Wolf said, kneeling beside Sophie. His hands, covered in tattoos and scars, were gentle as he checked her pulse and listened to her breathing. "How long has she been like this?" "Since morning," Marco said, tears running down his dirty face. "It keeps getting worse. We don't have her inhaler anymore. We don't have anything." Wolf looked up at Axel, his face serious. "She needs a hospital. Now." Axel pulled out a cell phone while Wolf stayed with Sophie. Her tiny chest moved up and down too fast, like a baby bird that had fallen from its nest. Wolf, with his gentle hands and worried eyes, talked to her in a soft voice. "Hey there, little one. My name's Wolf. I'm gonna help you breathe better, okay?" He turned to Marco. "What's her name?" "Sophie," Marco whispered. "She's 7. Another biker with a patch that said Hawk was on his phone. "Need an ambulance at the old Texaco station on Highway 16, mile marker 42. Child with severe asthma attack, approximately 7 years old. Female." His voice was calm but firm. Wolf had placed Sophie in a sitting position, rubbing her back in slow circles. "When did you two eat last?" he asked Marco without looking up. Marco looked at his feet. "Yesterday morning. We had some bread." Axel's face changed, his eyes getting soft even though his mouth stayed in a hard line. He pulled a granola bar from his vest pocket and handed it to Marco. "Eat this, kid. Now tell me, where are your parents?" Marco took small bites of the granola bar, the sweetness making his empty stomach hurt in a good way. As he chewed, he told them everything. How their mom got sick after Dad left. How she started taking medicine that made her act strange. How one day, 3 months ago, men in uniforms came and took her away in an ambulance when she wouldn't wake up. "She told us to run," Marco said, his voice small in the dusty room. "She said if the people in uniform saw us, they'd split us up, put us in different homes with strangers." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photo, its edges worn soft from being handled so much. "This is her. Before she got sick." Axel took the photo carefully between his thick fingers. It showed a pretty woman with the same dark curly hair as Marco and Sophie. She was smiling, holding both children on her lap in front of a Christmas tree. Everyone looked clean and happy, nothing like the dirty, scared children in front of him now. "She told us to stay together no matter what," Marco said, his voice breaking. "I promised her. That's why we ran. That's why we hide." Hawk walked back to the group, shaking his head. "Ambulance is coming from County General. They're short-staffed. 15 minutes at least." Wolf looked up, his face grim. "She might not have 15 minutes. Sophie's breathing was getting worse, her lips darker. Her eyes had a scared, far-away look. Outside, the sun was starting to sink lower in the sky. casting long shadows through the broken windows. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. Marco felt his heart beating too fast as he watched his sister struggle for each breath. "What do we do?" asked one of the younger bikers. He had a red bandana tied around his head and a patch that said Diesel. Axel looked at Sophie, then at Wolf. "How bad?" "Bad," Wolf said simply. He had been checking Sophie's fingernails, which had the same bluish color as her lips. "We can't wait." Axel made a quick decision. "My bike's the fastest. Wolf, you follow with Diesel and Ripper. The rest stay with the boy." He gently lifted Sophie, who seemed tiny in his massive arms. She still clutched Mr. Floppy against her chest. "We'll meet the ambulance on the way if we can." Marco grabbed Axel's arm, panic in his eyes. "I'm coming too." "I can't leave her." Axel looked down at the boy, understanding in his weathered face. "Kid, there's no room. She needs to get there fast, and I can't safely carry both of you." "But I promised." Marco's voice broke as tears spilled down his cheeks. "I promised Mom we'd stay together." The biker with the patch that said Tank stepped forward. He was shorter than Axel, but just as wide, with kind eyes that didn't match his tough appearance. "I'll take care of him, Axel. We'll be right behind you. Kid, I promise on my patch. We'll get you to your sister." Axel wrapped Sophie in his leather vest, the one with all his patches and badges. It swallowed her small body completely. With Wolf's help, he mounted his motorcycle, securing Sophie against his chest with one arm while keeping the other free to steer. "Follow me," he told Wolf. "Diesel. And Ripper. We make a wall around the girl. Nothing gets close." The three bikers nodded, understanding their mission. The engines roared to life, filling the quiet evening with thunder. Marco watched as Axel's motorcycle pulled away, his little sister wrapped in leather against the big man's chest. The three other bikes formed a protective triangle around them as they sped down the highway, getting smaller and smaller in the distance. Tank put a heavy hand on Marco's shoulder. "Come on, kid. Let's get you to your sister." He led Marco to his own massive motorcycle, a black and chrome machine that gleamed in the fading light. "Ever ridden before?" Marco shook his head, still watching the cloud of dust where Axel had disappeared with Sophie. His throat felt tight with fear. What if she died? What if they took her away? What if he never saw her again? Tank lifted him onto the motorcycle seat as if he weighed nothing. "Hold on to me tight, okay? Don't let go for anything." The other bikers were mounting their motorcycles too, engines starting one by one, like a rumbling conversation. As they pulled away from the abandoned gas station, Marco took one last look at the place that had been their home for the past 4 days. The cardboard boxes where they slept, the broken sink where they washed, the hidden corner where they'd kept their few belongings safe. Everything they owned in the world was there, except for Mr. Floppy, who was with Sophie. And the photo of Mom, which was in Marco's pocket, pressed against his racing heart. The wind rushed past Marco's face as Tank's motorcycle thundered down the highway. He held on tight, his small arms barely reaching around the big man's middle. The other bikers rode around them like a shield, their engines roaring together. The smell of leather and gasoline filled Marco's nose, and the vibration of the motor buzzed through his whole body. His heart pounded with worry for Sophie. "You okay back there?" Tank called over his shoulder, his voice fighting against the wind. "Yes," Marco shouted back, though he wasn't okay at all. In his mind, he saw Sophie's blue lips and her scared eyes. He squeezed his eyes shut and prayed to whoever might be listening that she would be all right. They rode for what felt like forever, but was really just 10 minutes. As they rounded a bend in the road, Marco saw flashing red and blue lights ahead. An ambulance was stopped on the shoulder, and next to it was Axel's motorcycle. Relief flooded through Marco like cool water. Tank slowed down, and the group of bikes pulled over. Marco jumped off before they fully stopped, his legs wobbly from the ride. He ran toward the ambulance, where two people in uniforms were leaning over a small form on a stretcher. Sophie. "Is she okay?" Marco cried out, pushing past the adults to reach his sister. Sophie had a mask over her face now, connected to a tank with a tube. Her chest still rose and fell too fast, but her lips weren't as blue. Her eyes were closed. "We're helping her now," said one of the ambulance workers, a woman with kind eyes and quick hands. "Are you her brother?" Marco nodded, not taking his eyes off Sophie. Mr. Floppy was still clutched in her arms, looking out of place against the medical equipment. "She's going to County General," the woman explained. "We're stabilizing her for transport." Axel stood nearby, his huge frame making the ambulance workers look small. His leather vest was gone, still wrapped around Sophie. Wolf was talking to the other ambulance worker, using words Marco didn't understand about oxygen levels and respiratory distress. "I'm going with her," Marco said, his voice stronger than he felt. The ambulance worker looked uncertain. "Are your parents meeting you at the hospital?" Marco froze. The truth would mean separation, foster homes, broken promises. Before he could answer, Axel stepped forward. "I called their uncle. He's meeting them there." His deep voice left no room for questions. "The boy rides with his sister." The ambulance worker nodded, too busy with Sophie to argue. They lifted the stretcher into the ambulance, and Marco climbed in beside his sister. Axel leaned in, his face serious. "We'll be right behind you, kid," he said quietly. "Don't worry." The doors closed, and the ambulance started moving, sirens wailing. Marco held Sophie's hand, careful not to disturb the plastic tube taped to her arm. The ambulance smelled clean and sharp, like the soap at the shelter they'd stayed in for a few nights back when Mom first went away. "Hey, buddy," said the kind-eyed woman, who was checking Sophie's breathing. "I'm Emma. What's your name?" "Marco," he answered, watching her hands move over his sister. "And this is Sophie, right? How old are you two?" "I'm 10. Sophie's 7. Emma nodded, writing something on a clipboard. "And where's your mom and dad?" Marco's stomach twisted. "Mom's sick," he said carefully. "She's in a hospital too." Emma's eyes changed, like she was putting pieces together in her head. "How long have you two been on your own?" Marco looked down. "We're not alone. We have each other." The rest of the ride passed in a blur of beeping machines and gentle questions that Marco tried to answer without telling too much. When they finally arrived at the hospital, everything happened very fast. People in scrubs took Sophie away on her stretcher, leaving Marco standing alone in a bright hallway that smelled like cleaning products. "Wait here," Emma told him, pointing to a plastic chair against the wall. "Someone will come talk to you soon." Marco sat, his dirty clothes making him feel out of place in the clean white hallway. His empty stomach growled, but he ignored it. All that mattered was Sophie. After what seemed like hours, but was really only 20 minutes, Marco heard the now familiar rumble of motorcycles outside. Through the glass doors of the entrance, he saw the Hells Angels parking their bikes. Axel led the group inside, his massive frame drawing stares from everyone in the waiting room. "How is she?" he asked Marco, kneeling down to be eye level with the boy. "They took her that way." Marco pointed down the hall. "They didn't tell me anything." Axel nodded, then turned to Tank. Find out what's happening with the girl." Tank walked to the front desk, where the receptionist's eyes widened at his approach. Wolf sat next to Marco, his weathered face kind. "You did good today, kid. Real good. Your sister's tough. Like you." Marco fought back tears. "What if they find out? About us? They'll split us up." Wolf exchanged a look with Axel. Before either could answer, a doctor in blue scrubs approached them. "Are you with Sophie?" she asked, looking uncertain at the group of bikers. "Yes," Axel said firmly. "How is she?" "She's stabilized. We've got her on medication and oxygen. She'll need to stay for a few days, but she should make a full recovery." The doctor looked at Marco. "Are you her brother?" Marco nodded, relief making him dizzy. "And your parents?" Before Marco could answer, a nurse hurried up to the doctor, whispering something in her ear. The doctor's face changed, surprise crossing her features. "I need to speak with all of you," she said, gesturing to a small room off the hallway. "We've found something you should know." Marco's heart sank as he followed the doctor, the bikers close behind him. Inside the small room, the doctor closed the door and looked at Marco with gentle eyes. "When we were treating your sister, we ran her information through our system," she explained. "Sophie Garcia, age 7. She paused, taking a deep breath. "Marco, your mother is here, in this hospital." The world seemed to stop spinning. Marco couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Mom? Here?" The doctor nodded. "Teresa Garcia. She was admitted 3 days ago to our rehabilitation unit. She's been asking the staff to help find her children." Tears spilled down Marco's cheeks, too many emotions hitting him at once. Relief, fear, hope, worry. Axel put a steady hand on his shoulder. "Can I see her?" Marco whispered. "Can Sophie see her when she's better?" The doctor led Marco down a long hallway that smelled like flowers and cleaning supplies. His heart beat so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. Axel walked beside him, a mountain of a man next to a small, dirty boy. The other bikers waited in the room, promising to check on Sophie. "Your mom has been working hard to get better," the doctor explained as they walked. "She's been very worried about you two." They stopped at a door marked Rehabilitation Unit. The doctor knocked gently, then opened it. Inside, a woman sat on the edge of a bed, looking out the window. Her dark curly hair was pulled back, and she wore a blue hospital gown. When she turned, Marco's breath caught in his throat. "Mom?" Teresa Garcia's face transformed, joy and disbelief washing over her tired features. "Marco? Oh my God, Marco!" She stood on shaky legs, arms outstretched. Marco ran to her, burying his face in her middle as her arms wrapped around him. She smelled different, clean, without the strange sweet smell that used to cling to her clothes. She felt thinner, but her hug was strong. "I've been so scared," she whispered into his hair. "I've been looking for you everywhere. The police, the shelters. No one could find you." She pulled back to look at his face, wiping tears from his dirty cheeks. "Where's Sophie? Is she okay?" Marco's eyes filled with fresh tears. "She got real sick, Mom. Her asthma. She couldn't breathe." Teresa's face went pale. "Where is she? Is she—" "She's okay," Marco said quickly. "She's here too. These men helped us." He turned to Axel, who stood awkwardly by the door, filling the frame with his massive shoulders. Teresa seemed to notice him for the first time. Confusion and fear crossing her face. The doctor stepped forward. "Ms. Garcia, these gentlemen helped get your children to the hospital. Sophie had a severe asthma attack." Axel shifted uncomfortably under Teresa's stare. "Ma'am," he said with a nod, Your boy flagged us down. Sophie's going to be fine." Teresa's eyes filled with tears. "You saved my daughter?" "Wolf's the one who knew what to do. He's a former medic. I just drove fast." Teresa took a step toward him, still holding Marco's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to—" "Can we see Sophie now?" Marco interrupted, tugging at his mother's hand. The doctor nodded. "She's stable. I'll take you to her." Sophie's room was small but bright, with sunshine streaming through the window. She lay in a bed that seemed too big for her small body. Tubes running from her arms and a mask still over her face. Mr. Floppy sat on the pillow beside her head. When she saw Marco and her mother, her eyes went wide with surprise and joy. "Mommy!" Her voice was muffled by the mask, but the word was clear. Teresa rushed to Sophie's side, carefully gathering her daughter in her arms. "My baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Marco climbed onto the bed next to them, and Teresa wrapped an arm around him too, holding both her children close. They stayed that way for a long time, a family reunited, broken but healing. In the doorway, Axel watched silently. Wolf and Tank appeared beside him, their big frames making the hospital hallway seem small. No one spoke, but their eyes said everything: relief, satisfaction, and something deeper that none of them would admit to feeling. 3 days later, the sun was setting outside Sophie's hospital window. Her color had returned to normal, and the doctors said she could leave tomorrow. Teresa sat in a chair beside her bed, reading a story while Sophie hugged Mr. Floppy. Marco sat cross-legged at the foot of the bed, eating a sandwich from the cafeteria. A knock at the door made them all look up. Axel stood there, with Wolf, Tank, Hawk, and the others behind him. They looked strange in the clean hospital, like lions in a library. But they also looked different from when Marco had first seen them. Less scary, more like regular people. "We just wanted to check on the kid," Axel said, his deep voice gentle. "How's she doing?" "Much better," Teresa said, standing to greet them. Over the past few days, she had learned the full story of how these men had saved her children. "The doctor says she can come home tomorrow." A silence fell over the room. Marco and Sophie exchanged looks. Home? They didn't have a home anymore. Axel cleared his throat. "About that, we had a meeting, our chapter. We took a vote." He looked uncomfortable, like his leather vest was suddenly too tight. "We found you a place. It's nothing fancy, just a small apartment over Hawk's sister's garage, but it's clean, and it's yours until you get back on your feet." Teresa's hand flew to her mouth. "What? I can't possibly—" "Already paid 6 months' rent," Wolf interrupted. "Non-refundable. And we got Sophie's prescriptions covered," added Tank, "plus some clothes and food to get you started." "Why?" Teresa asked, her voice breaking. "You don't even know us." Axel looked at Marco, then at Sophie. "Your kids reminded us of something important. Sometimes the people who look the scariest on the outside are just waiting for a chance to do something good." The next afternoon, a strange parade moved through the hospital parking lot. 7 massive motorcycles escorting a hospital wheelchair where Sophie sat, Mr. Floppy in her lap. Marco walked beside her, holding his mother's hand. Nurses and doctors watched from windows, smiling at the unusual sight. At the edge of the parking lot, the bikers stopped. "We'll lead you to your new place," Axel told Teresa, who clutched a small bag of belongings. As they prepared to leave, Marco tugged on Axel's leather vest. The big man leaned down. "Thank you," Marco said simply. "For stopping when nobody else would." Axel's eyes crinkled at the corners. "You know what, kid? Sometimes the bravest thing in the world is just asking for help when you need it. As the rumble of motorcycles filled the air once more, Marco looked up at the clear blue sky, the same color as Sophie's lips had been just 3 days ago. Now she sat in the sunshine, smiling, her breathing easy and even. His mother stood tall beside him, stronger than she'd been in months, and around them circled 7 guardian angels in leather vests, proof that sometimes help comes from the most unlikely places. "Some people look scary," Marco whispered, echoing his mother's words from long ago. "But you have to look with your heart, not your eyes."